Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. I welcome you to the 29th lecture on the course Management Organizational Policies and Practices. Let's have a recap at lecture 28 and then we move to the contents of today's lecture. During the previous lecture we had a discussion on the formation of teams, the reasons why teams are formulated, when they should be formulated, how team structures can be can give better outcomes compared to the individualized work designs, under what circumstances can we benefit from the team structures, and under what circumstances the individual structures they might be better for the firm. So that kind of decisions that the managers that need to make, we had a discussion on that. Then we discussed that how and what are the different reasons that the popularity of teams is growing in the organizations. But are teams really an answer to all the problems of the firms or not? We also made a comparison and a contrast between the groups and teams, wherein we tried to make an understanding, we tried to develop an understanding of how these two concepts are not interchangeable and how they are distinct concepts. And we discussed on a number of areas, such as the synergies that are the positive synergies they are generated in teams but not in the groups, and how the individuals in the teams they are their skills they are interrelated and complementary, but in the groups the skills of the group members they might be varied and they might be random, because the goals in the team they are the combined goals, the mutual goals of the team members, but in the groups their goals can be they set their individual goals, although they share the information with each other, but they are individually responsible for their goals, right? Therefore, in the groups, accountability is individual, whereas in the teams, the accountability is individual as well as mutual. So there were a number of differences that we discussed with reference to the concept of groups and teams. Then we had a discussion wherein we compared and contrasted the different types of teams. Right? We discussed the problem-solving teams, we discussed the self-managing teams, we discussed the cross-functional teams, we discussed the virtual teams, right? And when all these different types of teams are created, what are their different characteristics of these different types of teams, and what are the consequences of these different types of teams, and when they are used. So then we also identified the characteristics of effective teams overall, that when you feel or when an organization determines that it should design its work processes or it should design the jobs around teams, it identifies it on the basis of the high degree of interdependence between the tasks and the complex nature of the tasks, and which involve a number of people and which involve a number of problem solving skills from the different varied individuals. Then on the basis of these characteristics you decide that you need to have teams in your organization. Then what makes a team effective? We discussed a number of characteristics that make the teams effective, and that are at the individual level, that are about the structure, the processes in the organization, the composition of the team, the number, the size of the team, the roles and the skills of the team members, the skills of the team leader, right, the personality traits of the team member. So these were a number of factors that determine the effectiveness of the teams. And then we discussed that how the organizations can create the team players. We discussed a number of factors, such as the individual factors, how the organization can influence and overcome the individual factors for the individuals to convert them into team players, the individuals who are very individualistic. How it can convert them into team players. Then there are certain cultural differences, wherein some cultures they might be more supportive for teams, and some other cultures, such as the individualistic cultures, they may not be that supportive for teams. So how can the teamwork be created in that kind of cultures? And then we also discuss the importance of communication, that how communication is important in the organization for the teams to be effective, right? Then we discussed that when to use the individuals instead of the teams, And then we also developed an understanding of the teams in different global contexts, right? How the teams, they are more, for example, they are more effective in certain cultures, and how they're not effective in certain other cultures, such as the risk-taking cultures, or the cultures who are really people-oriented vis-a-vis the task-oriented cultures. There can be differences, and then there are high-power distant societies. They're in the or the societies where there is a lot of when there is risk, when there is ambiguity, right? And then in that kind of situations, they might be more promising for the teams than for the individuals. And what are the consequences of all these different global contexts for the formation of teams? You need to have a good insight into the implications of all these different factors and their influences, which they kind of play a moderating role in the influences of the teams on the performance of the work group or the work team, and overall organizational performance. So these factors can also be treated as the moderators, and you need to have an understanding that how these different cultural, individual, personality, organizational factors, they influence the effectiveness of the teams and how they influence the performance of the teams. And we also had a discussion that how the teams, for the effectiveness of the teams, we need to relate the job design as well as the performance evaluation systems, as well as the selection and the training systems of the organizations in a way that they are supportive of this teamwork, right? And your performance evaluation systems should be tied to the teamwork, and your selection procedures should be such that you hire the team players. You should have the processes that are in place that can with the help of which you can hire the team players. And we also had a discussion on how the team norms, they influence the team members' behaviors. They sanction the certain kinds of behaviors and don't sanction certain kinds of behaviors, right? And how these team norms, they regulate the individual's behavior, right? And so this was all the discussion that we did during the lecture 28, which was on teams. Today we are going to discuss, in continuation with that, in a broader framework, we'll be discussing the foundations of organizational structure. So what are the different forms of organizational structure and how those forms are different? We'll be discussing today what is structure. First we'll be understanding that what do we mean by organizational structure. Then we'll be seeing that how the structure should match with the strategy of the organization. What if it does not match with the strategy of the organization? What are the different consequences in that case? And then we'll be seeing the different forms of organizational structure, and the main forms of organizational structure that we'll be discussing today is the functional structure, the divisional structure, the SBU structure, and the metric structure. And then we'll be having a discussion and the implications of all these different forms of structures, the different characteristics of all these different structures on the basis of which they are distinguished, when a firm can use which type of structure, right? What are the guidelines to make or to formulate an organizational structure, right? And is it related to the firm size, or is it related to the type of the firm, or is it related to the strategy of the firm, right? Or is it related to the sector of the firm, etc. So how the structure of the organization is determined, we'll be discussing all these factors, and then at the end we'll be seeing the implications of all this discussion on structure for the managers and for the organizations, and we'll be drawing our conclusions. Okay, so to begin with, we need to have an understanding of what we really mean by organizational structure. What does organizational structure stand for? So organizational structure means that how job tasks, they are formally divided, grouped, and coordinated, right? It is as simple as that. So that how the different jobs that have been performed in the organization, what is the division of those tasks, right? How they are grouped and how they are coordinated, right? So the key elements of an organizational structure are the work specialization, departmentalization, chain of command, span of control, centralization and decentralization, and formalization. So these are the different elements that when we categorize them, they formulate one type of structure, or they formulate another type of structure, or still another type of structure, right? So but when we are talking about organizational structure, we are talking about these key different elements, right? They basically combine together and they form the organizational structure. So let's have a detailed look at all these different key elements of the organizational structure. I have here particular an interesting form for you, or an interesting table for you, where on the left side of the table, or in the left column, you see that there are a number of key questions and there are certain answers that are provided. Right, and so if we look at the question number 1, these are basically key design questions and answers for designing the proper organization structure. So the first question is, to what degree are articles subdivided into separate jobs? So these questions and these are the answers provided, they will basically help you. The questions are basically a definition of the different elements of the organizational structures. So work specialization, how do you determine the work specialization? If you look at the right hand side of the table, work specialization is basically it will be answered by the degree to the degree to which the articles, they have been subdivided into separate jobs, right? So if an organization is, for example, producing if an organization is producing some office furniture, right, and it is producing office chairs and office table. Let's take an example: an office chair and an office table, right? And if it divides this task of producing the office table, right, if it divides it in such a way that the 4 legs, they will be produced by one person and the top will be produced by another person. So it divides the task on the basis of the legs and the top of the table, right? So what the organization has done is that it has specialized the jobs, and it has defined them in terms of the production of the legs and the production of the top. So this is the work specialization, right? So one person is doing one specialized task of making only legs, and the other person is doing another specialized task of making only the top of the table, right? So if that same person has to produce the whole table, so it means that he has to produce the legs as well as the top of the table. The concept behind work specialization is that if the individuals, they should be trained in such a way that they should have the specialized skills to produce a particular task. So there should be task specialization, there should be work specialization. Each individual should be producing one specific, should be doing one specific work and keep on doing it repeatedly. So when that individual keeps on doing it repeatedly, he's specialized to do that task, right? And he does that with more efficiency, with greater detail, more efficiency, more accuracy, and in lesser time, right? And with the lower costs and lesser time, right? And the time that an individual will take, if it has to produce both the parts of the table, that is the top and the legs, then the time that that individual would take in producing both the parts, that would be if he has produced the legs and then he also has to produce the top, then he'll be changing his equipment that he's using, the hammers or the other equipment that he might be using. He might need to change his equipment, he might need to change his place, he might need to bring some other raw material for producing the top, and then the time would be wasted. But if he has to keep on producing only legs and legs and legs of the tables, then he will be using the same equipment, sitting in the same place, and keep on doing the task repeatedly, and thus he will be saving on time, and he will be specialized in doing that activity, and as a result gaining more and more experience, and as a result his specialization will improve, and the efficiency will come in the work, and the cost will also be lower, and more and more production and output will be achieved at lowest possible time. So this is basically the concept of work specialization, right? That you divide the different articles or the different production or different units on the basis to separate jobs, right? That is work specialization. Now, what is departmentalization? Departmentalization is that you departmentalize, how do you group the different jobs into one department, right? That is departmentalization. For example, for example, this if you combine these group these jobs of producing the legs and table into one, right? And you name it as the table production unit, right? So that is one department wherein the tables are being produced and therein 2 separate jobs are being done, right? So that is, you have combined those 2 separate jobs, but but they're linked job, and you have combined them into one, and you have made a separate department for that, right? And so that is departmentalization, that on what basis the jobs are grouped together. Then the chain of command, that to whom do individuals and groups report, right? And what would be the reporting relationships? That is what is defined here. Who will be the to whom will be the shop floor worker reporting, first line manager, for first line supervisor, or the direct supervisor, for example. And then to whom the direct supervisor will be reporting, will it be the regional manager, will it be the area manager, or will it be the operations manager, or whoever, whatever is the hierarchy in the organization. On the basis of that, how the chain of command will be working in that organization, that is who will report to whom, right? And then the span of control. Span of control is basically the that how many individuals can a manager effectively and efficiently direct, right? So how many individuals they are reportable to one manager, right? So if at the functional unit level or as a functional manager, how many employees they are reportable to one functional manager, or in a department, what are the level of managers you might be having, team leaders, and then you also might be having supervisors and as another layer, right? Or you might remove the layer of the team leaders and you might have only the managers, right? And so there can be different, it depends upon again the structure of the organization, that what structure it is following. So the span of control also determines the structure of the organization, whether it is a narrow span of control or it is a wider span of control. So we'll be discussing this in our next slide. Then the centralization and decentralization are basically where does decision making authority lies, right? And in the centralization it lies of course at the center, and decentralization the decision making is spread, it's not only at the top management. So we'll be discussing this also in our next slide. And the formalization is to what degree will there be rules and regulations to direct employee and manager. So how formalized is your workplace, how formalized are the certain ways of doing things, the processes and the policies and the rules and regulations, how much they are in place, how strict they are, how many there are, right? So in certain organizations there are rules for everything, right? For every minute thing there are rules, there are policies, right? And in certain organizations there are not so many rules, right? So that is the formalization, the degree to which the organization is formalized. Then work specialization, as we discussed earlier, it is the degree to which tasks in the organization they are subdivided into separate jobs. So here there is basically the concept of the division of labor. It makes efficient use of employee skills, right? Because the employee who is skillful for one specific kind of task has to do only that task, nothing else, right? So it increases employee skills through repetition, and of course the skills are enhanced, the skills are improved when you are doing the same activity again and again, the skills are improved, right? Then less between job downtime increases productivity, as I discussed earlier, that when you have to switch from doing one activity to another activity, and the time is lost and that is saved by way of work specialization, and the specialized training is more efficient, right? If you train the individuals on specialization, then it further increases their efficiency, and it allows use of specialized equipment, right? Okay, so if we see here that economies of diseconomies of scale, how they are related to work specialization. So at the horizontal axis we see that there is work specialization, and at the vertical there is productivity, and we see that up to a certain point with the increases in the work specialization the productivity increases, but beyond that point it is about on decline, right? So at very high levels of work specialization the productivity it starts to fall, right? Because the work becomes too much repetitive and it becomes too much autonomous for the employee, and as a result the productivity of the employee starts falling because it does not enjoy doing that work anymore, and it reduces the employee morale, and as a result the employee productivity also falls, right? We will discuss further on this when we discuss the different forms of structure. Now we come to the departmentalization, which is the basis by which jobs are grouped together. So as we discussed earlier, that how the jobs are grouped together on the basis on which, so sometimes the jobs are grouped together, the functions by the functions that they perform, for example the human resource department, the audit department, the accounting department, right, the operations department, etc. So they are the different functions that are being performed in the organizations, and those are all the related functions, they are grouped together into one department. So all the human resource related activities, the different jobs that the human resource, for example there is the recruitment manager, there is compensation manager, manager who is doing the compensation activities, and there is the training manager, there is the selection manager, etc. But they're all in the they're all grouped into the one department, which is the human resource department, right? And similarly, all the operations and all that activities, they're being done in the operations department. All the activities which are related to the productivity and the production, etc., right? And all the audit activities in the audit department. So you have grouped them on the basis of the functions, right? And then they can also be grouped on the basis of the products, right? So what kind of products are you dealing in, whether you're dealing in the consumer products or you're dealing in commercial products, right? So you can also group them on the basis of those products. So when we'll be discussing in future in the divisional structure, we'll be seeing that how the certain organizations, they use this divisional structure by product, right? And some organizations use the structure by geography. In the basis of the geographic regions, you make your you departmentalize on the basis of the geographic locations of your units, right? So for example, you say that the Asia Pacific region, this is the or the Middle East region, or the American region, right? So certain countries such as the Coca-Cola, they make their divisions on such basis, right? And then we have the process that you also make distinction on the departmentalized on the basis of the processes. So the similar processes, they are departmentalized into one, and the other processes are departmentalized into another, which are similar in nature, right? Then on the basis of the customers also, right? Such as the consumer division or the corporate division, they are again by consumer departmentalization. Okay, then we have this authority. Authority is, as we all know, it is the rights inherent in a managerial position to give orders and to expect the orders to be obeyed, right? So chain of command, we discussed that it's the unbroken line of authority that extends from the top of the organization to the lowest echelon and clarifies who reports to whom, right? So chain of command, it is the unbroken line of authority, right? So reporting relationships, as we discussed earlier. Then we have the unity of command, which is a subordinate should have only one superior to whom he or she is directly responsible. That is the unity of command principle. It states that at one time a subordinate has to be answerable, or it has to be the subordinate has to be reportable to only one boss. He cannot have more than one bosses, right? That is the unity of command principle, and we'll be discussing more about it when we discuss the different forms of organizational structure. Span of control, as we discussed, is the number of subordinates a manager can efficiently and effectively direct. So the concept of span of control is that the wider spans of management, they increase organizational efficiency. How do they increase organizational efficiency? Because when we mean, what do we mean that the wider spans of control? We mean that there are fewer layers of managers and there are more people who are reporting to the same managers, right? And as a result, the costs reduce, because the layer in the management, at least one layer maybe in the management, that reduces, right? And as a result, so it depends upon how wide the span of control is. If it is very wide, then maybe multiple layers of management they are eliminated, and as a result it reduces the cost and increases the efficiency, right? And a narrow span there has certain drawbacks on the other hand, because there are additional layers of management which can be avoided and that are expensive. So that is the drawback of the narrow span of control. And then the increased complexity of vertical communication is there. When you have multiple layers of the management, and of course then the chain of command is from the lower level manager to the senior manager, and that senior manager to his boss, and that boss to his boss, and so on, right? So the chain of command will be like that, and there will be multiple layers in the hierarchy, and as a result your communication, vertical communication, will become very complex, and the decision making can also be slow as a result of this. Then encouragement of overly tight supervision and discouragement of employee autonomy, right? Because these kinds of structures that employ this narrow span of control, they are really they're kind of the bureaucratic structures wherein employees they don't have much power, they don't have much autonomy. For the decision making is at the top, and the decisions they have to flow down from the top management to the lower level employees, and as a result the decision making is slow to the employee autonomy, and morale is also low. So herein we see this that we have the graphic presentation of this narrow and the wide span of control. On the left hand side triangle, you can see the narrow span of control, where we have assumed that there is span of 4. So we have a number of layers of manager. So their manager's level is from 1 to 6. So 1 is the top level manager, and the 6 is the bottom level manager. So each manager at all levels is looking for 4 employees. So at the top level, the first level, if you look at the tip of this triangle at 1, you see that there is the top manager, right? And he is 4 people are responsible to that manager, right? And then to those 4 managers, there might be 4 area managers, right? And they are again looking for 4 people each. So there are 16 people below them, and then those 16 are again looking for 4 each. There are then 64 below them. Those 64 again looking 4 each, and it makes 256. And this is how it is. There are multiple layers. You need to have 6 to 7 employees, so that all the employees, they are reporting to their to some of their managers at the level next to them, right, and who are next to them in the hierarchy. But if you widen the span of control, if you make it 8 instead of 4, then you can see that you have only managers from level 1 to 4, right? So you have directly eliminated the 2 levels of management by widening the span of control from 4 to 8, right? So now again, the 4096 employees, they are reportable to their higher level, and they are again reportable to their higher level, but only all the employees, they are covered only in the 4 layers of management, and when the span of control is narrow, then all the employees are covered in 6 layers of management, right? So here, in widening the span of control only by and eliminating the 2 management hierarchies, you are considerably reducing the you're considerably reducing the costs, right? And it's not only about the cost that the firm is reducing, but also the efficiency and the speed with which the decision making can be done. That improves. It gives more flexibility to the employees. It gives more autonomy to the employees at the lower level. Basically, when the managers, they are widening the span of control, and then they give also more authority and the more autonomy to the employees to take certain decisions with themselves, right? Because then it's not possible that for every employee, for everything, he's coming, so many number of employees that coming to one manager, and they are waiting for the manager to make decisions on every aspect, right? So it also gives a certain degree of autonomy to the employees. Then the centralization, it is basically the degree to which the decision making is centralized at one single point in time, point in the organization, right? And the decentralization is the degree to which decision making is spread throughout the organization, right? So in centralization, of course, the decisions are made at the top, and then they flow to the bottom, while in decentralization, the decisions are at the lower level, also the decisions take place, or that the lower level employees also participate in the decision making process, or they have the autonomy and the authority they have the autonomy that they can make some decisions themselves. So that is decentralization. And the formalization is the degree to which the jobs within the organization are standardized, right? So as we discussed earlier, that the rules and regulations, how much rules and regulations are formed, and how much strict the company is on the rules and regulations, that is the formalization. Okay, there are a number of different types of organizational structures. Let's start with the simple structure, which is characterized by lower degree of departmentalization, wide spans of control, authority centralized in a single person, and little formalization. So that is basically an example where of an owner manager, right, or a proprietor, you can say, who is basically the sole owner of a business, right? And here this is the example of the Jack Gold owner manager, which is a men's store, right? So here what we can see is that at the top there is only this owner manager, Jack Gold himself, right? And he has a number of he has a number of people who are reporting to him. So the span of control is really wide. You can say that this is the only manager at the higher level, and all these people, they are reporting to this manager. There are a few sales persons, and there is one cashier, and he is the owner manager of a retail store, right? So the very simple structure. There is very wide span of control. Authority is of course centralized here in that single person, and there is little formalization, right? So it is not a costly structure. It is a very simple structure. It is easily understandable structure. It is less bureaucratic as well, right? And authority of course lies in the in that single person, right? Then what is bureaucracy? It is a structure of highly operating routine tasks achieved through specialization, very formalized rules and regulations, tasks that are grouped into functional departments, centralized authority, narrow spans of control, and decision making that follows the chain of command, right? So herein the tasks are very routine, and how they are made routine through heavy reliance on specialization. So there is the concept of work specialization. Works are highly specialized. As a result, the tasks are really routinized, right? And there are very much formal ways of doing things. There are formal rules and regulations in the organization which are strictly followed, right? And the tasks are grouped into these functional departments. There is departmentalization on the basis of the functions, right? And the authority is centralized, right? And so the individuals, they don't have any authority. They're highly centralized organizations, no decentralization, no autonomy, no authority with the employees at the lower level, and they have to do their work as per the formal processes of the organization, as per the rules and regulations. They cannot deviate from them. They have to strictly follow them, right? So, and then there are the narrow spans of controls, and as a result of narrow spans of controls, there is very tight control over the employees, basically, right? Because there are only, for example, just as in the previous example, we saw that there are very few employees who are reportable to one manager. So one manager has to have a look only on 2, 3 or 4 employees, for example, right? And then compared to that, if a manager has to look for 10 to 12 employees, then of course the control mechanism in the later case will not be that strong, and the employees will be given more autonomy, but they will be accountable. They will be more accountable relatively, right? And the rules and processes, they won't be that hard, and they won't be that formalized. But here in this case, there is the span of control is narrow. So you see that all these features of the bureaucratic organizations, they are basically supporting each other. They're all in line with each other, right? The rules and regulations are very much formalized, right? And in order to keep a check and control on those rules and regulations, how they are being followed, and there is narrow span of control, right? And the decision making that follows from that chain of command. Right, and in such a way that the decisions are taking place with the authority, and their decisions are centralized, and they are taking place at the higher level. So all these features, they are basically supporting each other of the in this system or in the bureaucracy, right? So what are the strengths of bureaucracy? One, of course, when there is specialization, as we discussed, right, in the bureaucracy, what happens is that of course you can reap economies of scale when the individuals, they are producing the specialized tasks routinely and repeatedly. They are producing the same task. As a result, their per unit cost reduces, and the per unit production or the output increases, the productivity increases, right? And as a result, the economies of scale, they can be reaped, right? And also there is minimum duplication of personnel and equipment when this because it is, as we discussed, that it is departmentalized on the basis of the function. So all the activities related to human resources, they are being done in the human resource department. All the activities related to the production and operations, they are being done in the operations department. And as a result, there is no duplication of personnel and equipment. All the people who are the technical experts or who are involved in the production, they are all working in that operations department, utilizing those same equipment and same resources. And as a result, there is no duplication of resources, right? And there is no duplication qualification of equipment. Then there is enhanced communication between the people who are producing this, doing the similar tasks, right? So all the in the operations department, all the people who are related to the operations or the production, they will be there, right? So they can share, they can communicate with each other, they can share each other's problems, and they can have discussions on how to solve different problems or how to fix different problems, etc., right? They can benefit from each other's expertise. But here we see that there is centralized decision making. That is also one of the features of this bureaucratic organizations, right? But the weaknesses are that there is subunit conflicts with organizational goals, because we saw that how the different there is departmentalization on the basis of how the jobs are being grouped, right? So there can be the conflict can arise between the different units or between the different groups within the organization, right? Because of the allocation of the resources, for example, right, that one department might be wanting more allocation of resources than the other one, right? And or there might be some conflict between the different departments. For example, there is R&D department and there is this manufacturing department, right? And R&D department wants to focus more on the production side, while the manufacturing department wants to really keep on producing the existing products and reaping the economies of scale. So there a conflict can arise between the two departments, and also the interdepartmental communication in this kind of structures is really low, right? And as a result of that low in interdepartment communication, also the conflict can arise, and also because of the resource allocations, that which department or which unit it gains more resources, it gets more resource allocations, then these can be the different points of conflicts that can arise. Then the obsessive concern with rules and regulations, as I explained to you, that there are a number of rules and regulations, very minute rules and regulations as well, that are in place, and the excessive concern is shown. They are very formalized, and the individuals, they cannot deviate from them. So that is one of the weaknesses, because it's not a flexible system then, right? And the employees, it's not possible. It is a closed system, and there is no room for any adaptation to any change, right? Then there is lack of employee discretion to deal with problems, right? And of course, how can the employees deal with the different problems? For if there any problem occurs or anything, then they have to take permissions. They have to seek permissions from the top level, because the authority ultimately lies at the top level, and the decision making is centralized, right? Then the boundaryless organizations are the ones that seek to eliminate the chain of command. They have limitless span of control, and they replace departments with empowered teams, right? So that is the concept of boundaryless organizations, where the organizational boundaries that are being blurred, right? And these are the organizations that they do not believe in the narrow span of control. They have the limitless span of control, right? So as a result of the limitless span of control, it means that all the individuals, they are being empowered, all the employees, they are being empowered, right? And they are transformed into these empowered teams, and they are managing themselves, right? And they're managing all their activities themselves, right? So we discussed the concept of these managing empowered teams. So these organizations, they basically eliminate vertical and horizontal internal boundaries, right? And they also break down external barriers to customers and suppliers, right? So there are no barriers between the suppliers, between the customers. The customers are also part of the organization to develop the products of the organization with the help of the suppliers, and the collaboration with the suppliers. In collaboration with the customers, these organizations, they build and they sell. Then we have this mechanistic model, which is a structure characterized by extensive departmentalization, high formalization, and limited information network and centralization, right? So again, here there is extensive departmentalization, and there is very high formalization, and there is a limited number of information network. Then we have this organic model, which is a structure that is flat. It uses cross-hierarchical and cross-functional teams. It has low formalization, processes a comprehensive information network, and relies on participative decision making, right? So that is the organic structure. So if we see it, it is basically the opposed to that mechanistic structure or the bureaucratic structure, herein as opposed to the hierarchical system, that chain of command system, right, the narrow span of controls, herein it is very much flat, and there is the concept of this cross hierarchical and the cross functional teams around which this structure is designed. It is very less formal, and it possesses a comprehensive information network, and it relies on participative decision making compared to the autocratic decision making, which was the hallmark of the bureaucratic systems, where the authority is centralized and the decision making takes place at the top. But compared to that, in here, there you can see that there is there are flat. These are the flat organizations. There is no vertical organizational hierarchy, and there are cross-functional teams, and there is less formalization, and the individuals, they are allowed to participate in the decision-making process, right? And they are more they have more autonomy here. So let's I have a graphical presentation of this mechanistic and organic model, and you see under the mechanistic model, there is the figure shows that the tasks, they are divided into functions, right? So here we can see that 4 different functions, right? And if we and all these 4 different functions, they each function has its own manager. So if we look at the extreme left on this figure, so the one block, we see that is, for example, if we say that this is the R&D manager, and it has under it the 5 people, right, who are reporting to this R&D manager, and this R&D manager is reporting to the top manager, right? And the second block in this figure, if we see that there is again, we see that if we say, for example, that there is this human resource manager, and he has the 3 people who are reporting to this human resource manager, and that human resource manager is also reporting to the top manager. So this is the mechanistic model, where there is high specialization on the basis of what you are doing. There is rigid departmentalization. You can see that there are these 4 different departments, and then there is this clear chain of command. We know that all the employees at the bottom, they are reporting to their respective functional managers, and those functional managers are reporting at the top to the CEOs. Then there is narrow span of control, so there are multiple layers of managers, and then there is centralization. The decision making is done at the top, right? And there is high formalization, and so everyone is clear about who will be doing what. The organic model, as we discussed the features of organic model, and if we look at the figure at the top, at the bottom left, we see that it's an example of those these self-managed teams, and how there is no supervisor, there is no manager. They are accountable, they are reportable to each other. All the members, they are self-managing their teams, they are setting their goals themselves, and they are accountable for their performances, and they have full autonomy. They are fully empowered to even make hire and fire decisions, and all the decisions that are being taken by the supervisor, the supervisor is eliminated, and they are taken by themselves, right? So we also have the example of the cross-functional teams here, which wherein the different individuals from the different functions, the 1 or 2 individuals, he comes from all the different functions, and they form a cross-functional team, and the cross-hierarchical team, wherein there are the lower and the upper levels hierarchy in the management. The people, they form and they take part, they form a team, right, from the different hierarchies. Then there is free flow of information, as you can see, right? And there are and as a result of this formation of these cross-functional teams, etc., there is better communication, intergroup communication as well, which was one of the drawbacks of the functional structure that we saw earlier, wherein there is no inter-department communication, and one department might be doing something else, and the other department might be doing something else. So if the manufacturing department is saying that it wants to make it has a target that it wants to make 100 tables more in 1 month, but the sales department, there is not much communication with the other departments, and as a result the sales department may not have that sales target, so there is lack of that. But when the cross-functional and the cross-hierarchical teams, when all the members they are coming from the different departments, and they are forming a team, then there is better chances of communication between the different departments. right, and better sharing of information, right. So here there is the more decentralization. Of course they have their autonomy, they're empowered and they can make the decisions, and there is low formalization as well. Okay, then why do the structures differ? That is the question, right. Why different organizations they have different structures? So the one answer is that strategy, because the strategy of different organizations differ, therefore the structures of different organizations also differ. As simple, right. So for example, the organizations who have the innovation strategy, which is a strategy that emphasizes the introduction of major new products and services, right. So you innovate, right. So you have this strategy that you have to bring in the innovative products into the market, you have to bring in the innovative services into the market. That is your strategy. On the other hand, another firm might be having a cost minimization strategy, which is a strategy that emphasizes tight cost of controls, avoidance of unnecessary innovation or marketing expenses, and or price cutting. Right, so we have already discussed all these different strategies in detail. Here I'm just touching them briefly in order to discuss that how these different strategies they can be related to the different structures, right. So the cost minimization strategy is when you are trying to control your costs at all levels, and you are not going into any innovations or marketing expenses or into product developments, etc. But with your existing product you are trying to minimize your costs, and by increasing your efficiency and increasing your per unit, decreasing your per unit costs, and cutting your price at all levels, right. So that is the cost minimization. So produce at lowest possible costs and in the market, sell them in the market, right. Then the imitation strategy is a strategy that seeks to move into new products or new markets only after their viability has already been proven, right. So the imitation strategy, some firms they follow this strategy, they're not the first movers, right, but they are the imitators. So what they do is that when a new product or service has come into the market, these innovators, they basically then they have, as per their strategy, they bring in the same product with the maybe sometimes some better features than the product that has come by the new mover has brought into the market. They follow that product, they imitate that product, right. But when the product has once launched in the market, right, it's we know that it's that the information technology is cheaper, and it becomes cheaper every day. So when it is introduced in the market, its price falls suddenly, right. So the imitating strategy, the firms who follow, they might be bringing in better products, into the market and with lower costs, right, than their competitors or than the first movers, and sometimes they as per their strategy they kick out even the first movers from the market. So here we see that if we have discussed these three different strategy options, right. So what are the different structural options that are available to the firms based on these strategies? So if the firm has an innovative strategy, then the organic structure might be an answer to this firm, because organic structure, as we discussed, that it is a loose structure, it has low specialization, it has low formalization, it is decentralized, the employees they are empowered in here, the rules are not very strict and rules are not very much jotted down, right, and the employees they are working in these cross-functional teams and the cross-hierarchical teams. When they are working in cross-functional teams, their communication, intergroup communication can be considerably improved, and as a result there are different people who are coming from all the different, representing all the different departments. They join together, they sit together, they brainstorm, and they can bring in more creative and innovative solutions, right. And this type of structure also, we know that it encourages the empowerment and encourages the decision making at the lower level, which are really important for the innovation strategy to be implemented, right. Unless the employees are empowered, unless they are not given the flexibility, they cannot innovate, they cannot create new things, they cannot think in new ways, right. So the organic structure, it might be a good match when the organization is using the innovation strategy. The firms that use the cost minimization structure, if they use this mechanistic organizational structure, that would match their strategy. Why? Because we discussed that under the mechanistic structure, the firms they use the tight controls, they use extensive work specialization, high formalization, and high centralization. Therefore, they have to minimize their costs, right? And they take that. We discussed that by the use of the work specialization, they can reap more and more economies of scale when the employees, they don't have the discretions to do things at their own, and the tasks are repetitive, and as a result the employees, they can increase their per unit productivity, and they can reduce the per unit costs, and as a result the cost can be minimized. So the mechanistic structures can be an answer to the firms who are using the cost minimization strategy, while the firms who are using this imitation strategy, they can use a combination of the mechanistic and organic structures, right? Because they are the imitating firms, they are partly using they are not creating anything new, they are not innovating, but they are imitating the products that have been brought in the market by their competitors, right? Therefore they need to have a combination of the characteristics of these two structures, right? So they mix of loose with tight properties, tight controls over current activities, and looser controls for new undertakings, right? So like their existing products, they need to have the tight controls, and for the products for which they want to imitate, they want to bring some changes in, right? By following those of the competitors, they might need a little organic structure. Then we have the size. How does the size influence the structure? The size of an organization affects its structure. An organization grows larger, it becomes more mechanistic, right? And of course, when for very large organizations, then it becomes a little difficult to give them a lot of discretion to empowering the employees and organizing around teams, and there needs to be, with the increase in the size of the organization, there is more specialization, and there are more vertical levels, and there are more rules and regulations, right? So this is how the size also determines the structure in the organization, right? So we discussed a number of characteristics of the bureaucratic organizations, and we discussed that why bureaucracies they survive, right? We have already discussed the characteristics of the bureaucratic organizations, and here on the right side we see that the reasons why bureaucracy survives: because of the large size, the environmental turbulence that can be largely managed, the standardization is achieved through hiring people who have undergone extensive educational training, and technology maintains control. So what are the findings relating to this organizational designs and employee behavior? Work specialization contributes to higher employee productivity, but it reduces job satisfaction. We can understand why: because the employee morale and the becomes down, and their commitment and satisfaction becomes down when they have to produce something again and again. There is so much repetition, and there is so much monotony in the work that they're doing. So the productivity increases, but the satisfaction falls. And the benefits of specialization have decreased rapidly as employees seek more intrinsically rewarding jobs. So the job does not remain intrinsically rewarding, right? Because there is no autonomy in the task, and there is no sense of fulfillment in doing that job. The effect of span of control on employee performance is contingent upon individual differences and abilities, task structures, and other organizational factors. And participative decision making is decentralized in decentralized organizations is positively related to job satisfaction, but that is not there in these bureaucratic organizations on the specialized nature of work. On the other end, the organic organizations where there is more participative decision making, there the job satisfaction is higher, right? So there are a number of factors such as that we discussed, such as the strategy, such as the size, the technology, and the environment that influence or that determine the structural design of the organization, whether it would be the mechanistic or it would be the organic organization. There are a number of factors that are determining, and then that is related to the performance and satisfaction. We discussed that the mechanistic structures, they are more related to performance but not to satisfaction, and the organic structures, they are related to the increased satisfaction and increased commitment of the employees, right? So these are of course moderated by the number of individual and differences and cultural norms, right? How the individual differences and the cultural norms, we have discussed it in a number of ways in our previous lectures, that how the personality differences influences the ways the individuals behave under different setups, and how the cultural differences, they can influence these different relationships. Then a structure largely dictates how objectives and policies they will be established. then the structures dictate how resources will be allocated. So there needs to be a good link between the strategy of the organization and the structure of the organization. When a new strategy is formulated or there is change in the strategy of the organization, then of course the new administrative problems emerge, right? And as a result, the organizational performance declines, right? So you need to bring changes in your organizational structure, so that new organizational structure is established and the organizational performance again improves. So this is the Chandler's strategy structure relationship, which shows that how, as in response to a change in structure in strategy, if the structure is not changed, it will lead to reduced performance, and how if adjustments in the structure that are in line with the new strategy, that can increase the organizational performance, right? So the functional structure we discussed, as we discussed earlier, that it is the here in the groups there and activities, they are divided by the by way of functions, and it is a simple and inexpensive form of structure, right, wherein you can say that there is no duplication of tasks. There are the same equipments and the same resources that are being used by the different departments. Then the specialization of business activities is there, and it minimizes needs of elaborate control systems. There is accountability at the top, and the delegation of authority is not encouraged, right? So consequences of this functional structure are that, of course, there is low employee morale. When again we discussed all these things earlier, that when there is emphasis on specialization and the repetition, and on the departmentalization on the basis of the functions and on the basis of the jobs that are being performed, there is low discretion on the parts of the employees. The roles and procedures and the chain of command is very much well written down and has to be followed, and there is a strict control mechanisms, right, and strict accountability, right, and the managed decisions are taking place at the top level, and there is centralization, right? So as a result of all these factors, there is low employee morale, there are inadequate planning of products and markets, right? So there is not much emphasis on the new product development and the markets, right? But because only the repetition is being done, monotony is there, repetition is being done, same products, keep producing the same products and reaping the economies of scale. The emphasis is on that, right? And that leads to short-term and narrow thinking, right? Of course, you don't have a long-term vision. Yeah, right. You are just you have just written down policies, and you are just rules and regulations, and you keep on following them, right? And you're not thinking in terms of the long term. You're not thinking strategically that how the market is changing, how the environment is changing, how you need to respond to those factors. So R&D may strive to over-design products, while manufacturing may favor low-frills products that are mass-produced. This is how the different departments, the conflicts can arise between the different departments. And we have the SHARP, which is consumer electronics, which is as an example, who is based on this form of organizational structure. Then we have this divisional structure, where there is a decentralization in the under the divisional structure. We see that the divisions that can be on the basis of the products, the product divisions that can be on the basis of the consumer divisions. I gave you the examples for these, right? And the consumer electronics and the corporate, like the credit cards, they have their consumer divisions, and they have their corporate divisions, or the corporate clients. And similarly, the utilities, they have their consumer division, they have their corporate divisions, or the industrial divisions, right, wherein they're serving their consumer products. They have the different rates for the consumers and the different rates for the industry and for the corporates, right? So they are basically on the basis of the customers. You make your divisions, or you can make your divisions on the basis of the geographic regions, right, or you can make your divisions on the basis of the products. But in all these different cases, when you are making your divisions on the basis of any of these factors, what you're doing is that and all these divisions are basically independent, right? So all these divisions, they follow that functional structure, but independently. So what is happening is that there is duplication of resources, right? So each division has its own resources of all kinds. So there is duplication of resources, which is costly. The structure is basically costly, right? And it allows local control of situations, of course. Then as there is more authority is more delegated to the divisions. They can make their own decisions, and the competition can become dysfunctional, limiting sharing of ideas between the divisions, because then again the divisions they will be competing with each other on the basis of the allocation of resources, right? And as a result, between the divisions there might not be the sharing of ideas, right? So Hershey Foods is an example, which is a consumer goods company, and it is divided. It has the divisions by geographic regions such as the USA, Mexico, and Brazil, right? However, division by product might be more useful, such as chocolate, non-chocolate, and grocery, right? Because as a result of the globalization, the division by geographic region is not very much practical now. The SBU structure is wherein basically all the divisions, when the organizations, when they become very large organizations, then it becomes difficult to handle so many divisions at the corporate level of the organization. So some organizations or the conglomerates, they have hundreds of divisions, then it's not possible to manage it that way. Then the divisions, similar divisions, they are put under one strategic business unit, and reduces span of control at the highest level, right? And makes strategy implementation easier when you have group them into the different SBUs, right? But it is of course costly. Dell has reorganized its divisions into two strategic business units. One is the consumer products and the other one is the commercial products, right? Then we have the matrix structure. We discussed that it is the most complex of all designs, and it depends upon both vertical and horizontal flow of authority and communication. So under the matrix structure, what you're doing is that you're following basically also the functional structure you're following as well. But on the other hand, there is violation of unity of command, as is in the functional structure. Herein, it is designed around teams, the cross-functional teams. If I show you the example in one of my next slides, it would be clear for you that herein this is the example of the simple functional organizational structure, where there is the top manager and there are the different departments, right? And this is the example of the divisional structure, where the product division A and all the different departments under the product division A, then there is a product division B and all the different departments under that, and then C and all the different departments under product division C, and so on. Then we have the matrix structure, wherein there is an employee who is here. This is the example of a university, of a college of business administration, where there is a program-wise demarcation, such as the undergraduate program, master's, PhD, research, and executive department development, and there are also the academic departments, right, such as the accounting, administrative studies, finance, and etc. So the employee here is reportable to both the program manager, right, as well as to the academic department's deans, right? So he is responsible to both of them. So this is basically herein what is happening is that this is more like a cross-functional teams, wherein the projects, they are carried out with the help of the cross-functional teams, right? Of course, there is no one optimal organizational design when you see that how you have to match the strategy with the structure. So small firms, they normally use the functional structure, right? And the consumer firms, they normally use the divisional structure, and the large firms, they use the matrix structure. And changes in structure may not make bad strategy good, bad managers good managers, and make bad products sell. That is not necessary. That so your structure does not necessarily determine whether you will be successful, or whether your strategy is good or not, or whether you will be a successful manager or not. Here I have a number of questions prepared for you. The first one is that what kind of structure might someone who has a low tolerance for ambiguity feel most comfortable in? The bureaucratic structure, the organic structure, the matrix structure, and the virtual structure. Why is it bureaucratic? Try to come up with the arguments, try to come up with the reasons that why it is bureaucratic. So you need to discuss it with your neighbor, why a virtual organization would not make this same person feel comfortable, right? So give your arguments, why or why not. Second, if someone has a high need for affiliation, would a virtual organization be a good fit for him or her? Why or why not? So again, discuss it with someone whether or not an organic organization would be a good fit for this same person, right? Try to think through, try to analyze the different elements, the different characteristics of these different organizations, the structure of these different organizations, their setup, their characteristics, and then try to come up with your answers with logic and arguments. Okay, with which type of structure do you think trust is most necessary? Why? Are the substitutes for trust that are potentially built into some structures? If so, which ones, right? So try to relate these different structures to the level of trust, right? And how do you think that they are related to the trust level can be different under the different structures, and what can be the consequences. So try to think through this as well. So these were the contents of today's lecture. I hope you enjoyed it. To me, it is a really interesting topic. The structure of the organization, the strategy of the organization, and how a match between the two is important, right? The different forms of the organizations and the different structures that they follow. How do we match their strategies with the different structures of the organizations, right? And try to be a little analytical, and try to be a little critical as well when you try to answer all these different questions, and try to see that what are the implications of these different structural forms vis-a-vis the different sectors in the different sectors, right? And how the strategy of the organization can be different. Different organizations can be different within the same industry, and within the same industry, as a result, how the structures of the organizations they can be different, right? And how these strategy and the structure they can be different, or what are their implications for the organizations that are operating under the turbulent environments vis-a-vis the organizations that are operating under the stable environments, right? So try to think through utilizing the contents of this lecture and reading from the book. Try to analyze all these aspects and try to get the answers for all these different aspects, because we have already done I think 1 or 2 lectures on the strategic management before, and this one can be partly linked to the strategic management, right? And so try to link up all these different lectures on the strategic management, and then try to in cohesion try to find the solution and answer to these questions, right? So with this I conclude my today's lecture. I wish you all the best. Thank you for your patient hearing. Allah Hafiz.